Today I'd like to finish up on the unconditional positive regard, right? So we've been doing here unconditional positive regard, and we've talked a lot about nonviolence, and then your strength, and I try to remember, and hopefully that's what you wrote to me about today. And last week we also covered this one, right? Maybe we're too harsh with ourselves. We need to be kinder and appreciate who we are, everything that we are. And the last one is this one: why congruence and unconditional positive regard matter for work, right? And I don't know if you remember, but actually this is something I described in the description, for the seminar, right? When you had to apply for the seminar, I wrote that the goal of this seminar is to help you start your self-assessment process. This process is very important for your own personal growth and will be required when you start looking for a job, right? I actually decided to teach this seminar, especially for this last reason. It's always really hard for me to see you, at the end of third year and during fourth year. I don't want to say struggling, but having a hard time with, job hunting, especially because of the self-assessment, right, that they ask you to do. So that was one of my main motivations, right, to help you, start considering who am I. So today, by keeping on focusing on unconditional positive regard towards self and using and reviewing congruence, I hope I can help you see why what we're doing together will help you with work, right? And to do this, I'm using a TED Talk, which is called How to Find Work You Love, right? So the name of the presenter is Scott Dinsmore, and the TED Talk is really long, actually. So I've tried to summarize it and show to you what we've done so far matches what he's saying, right? So if you look, I think it would be helpful if you look in your booklet, page 16 and 17. It might help you follow more easily. So when he starts the TED Talk, Scott Dinsmore asks a question and then answers that question. And to me, it was wow, it's not just in Japan, because he's talking about the US. But I honestly thought it was mainly in Japan that you had this situation. And basically, the question is, why are you doing the work you're doing? Right? So why do you do the job you're doing? And then the answer, the most common answer in the US was because somebody told me I'm supposed to. And this has always kind of been my feeling with Japan when I arrived, that you don't really have a true choice in what you're supposed to do for job. It's like very specific and in a way limited, right? And to explain to you why I think that way, before I became a teacher, I basically had 3 other jobs. And it was not a problem changing, right? And finding what I really wanted to do. So if I answer this question, for me, why am I doing the work I'm doing? It's because it's the most meaningful job I've found, right, for myself. So not because I'm supposed to, and nobody told me, right, to do it. But so it seems to be something very common in developed countries, at least, because Scott Dinsmore is talking about the US. I think it's also the situation in Japan. And the consequence of, one of the consequences is that 80% of workers in the US don't like their job. 80% of people wake up in the morning and go to work and are like, I don't want to go to work. So Scott Dinsmore was shocked, right, by this concept that 80% of people wake up in the morning to do a job they don't really like or they don't find at least meaningful, right? And so he wanted to change this, and what he did is that he studied what passionate world changers do, right? So passionate means people with a lot of motivation, right? It comes from passion, like really strong feeling inside to do what they do. And what he means by world changers, it's not actually being Steve Jobs, right? That's something he gives a specific example. And I add, because we talked about her Mother Teresa, yes, these people change the world with their products for Steve Jobs or by their actions, right? For Mother Teresa. But he's not talking about just famous people, right? That change the world on a very big scale or at a very high level. But basically for him, a world changer is someone that does work. So he says, doing work that embodies who you are. So the work you're doing shows who you are. And I guess that's another way for me to talk about being a teacher. Being a teacher is extremely meaningful, but it also gives me a chance to show who I am, right? To show what I care about, to be the way that shows me the best, right, basically. So, so doing work that embodies who you are, or it could be something else, so something that matters to you, so that is important to you, and it has an impact that only you can make, right? So what is the thing you're special about, right, that can have an impact on other people? So he's not just talking about famous people, right? It's people who do a job that brings them a chance to be who they are or to have an impact on others because of who they are. And so for me, that's why also I've been asking you to think about your strength, right? What is it that you're good at? What is it that maybe nobody else is good at, right, in that situation, that you can only do and that you could use, right, in a job. So that's a way of looking at finding a job, yeah? And so basically in his, studies, he figured out three things. Right? There are more, but the most important ones, the three things that the passionate world changers do. And when I listened to him, I was like, oh my God, this is like what the PCA, right, is trying to share with people so that, they can live beautiful, meaningful lives. So it was so interesting, right, for me to listen to him and like thinking, oh, yep, PCA, yep, PCA, yep. So that's why I chose this one, so that I can basically, if you look right, page 16 to 17, I compared what he says with what the PCA offers as well, right? So this is called a parallel, right? It's two different people saying it, but they're saying the same thing, right? The parallel things they're saying. So if we start from the beginning, right? First semester, we spend a lot of time on congruence, right? The idea that I really would like you to understand who you are, right? And be able to share it with others. So congruence requires to know yourself, and basically Scott Dinsmore said it is an essential step. If you don't know this, you can't really do anything, right? Because it's like, you're walking blindfolded and trying to find the right job, but you can't see, right? So if you don't know who you are, how can you find a job that will be meaningful to you, right? And so Dinsmore says it's an essential step because if you don't know what you're looking for, you're never going to find it, right? It makes sense when you read it, but a lot of people don't spend that time, right, to try to understand who they are. And Dinsmore describes it as becoming a self-expert, right, to know yourself really well. And he has 3 ways to do it. And this is what I've been telling you, right? Finding your strength, your unique strength. So he describes it this way: things that you wake up loving to do no matter what, right? Even if you're tired, even if you're sick, the thing you're doing is you're loving it, right? And for me, I've never been absent because I'm sick. I come to work even if I'm sick. That's something I'm like, no, I'm okay. I'll be okay. I can do this. I will be here, right? So because I just love so much what I do. So that's part of unconditional positive regard, right? Finding your strength. And please, you know, I can hear in the back of my head some of you maybe say, oh, I don't have unique. It's okay. Strength, right? Focus on your strength. What is it that you are good at and that you would, you know, love to do no matter what? Also, if you remember in the first semester, I asked you about your values, right? What are your values? And this is the second thing that Dinsmore said about becoming an expert. What are your values? Because it is important. Imagine if you have to make a decision, and I'll give you a teaching decision, right? You have had a student who hasn't been very good with attendance or doing homework, and so your feeling is like the student shouldn't pass the class, right? But then on the test day, the final test day, the student does actually really well. So what do you do, right? My value is I have a grading system, so I use that, right? Whatever my personal feelings are, I go by this and I follow this, right? So sometimes I had to fail students even at 59, right? By 1 point, they couldn't get 60. Because if I start doing this, where do I stop, right? 55, 56, right? So I realized that I really needed to know what was fair to me, and to me, my grading system is fair, I think, right? So I always follow this, right? So that my feelings, I can leave them aside and just follow what I think is fair for grading. So if you don't have this, it's so difficult to grade. I swear to you, I hate grading, right? It's just so difficult. But once you, for me, I know what my values are for that, and I stick to it, and now it's okay. I don't have any more problems. So having values really help you understand who you are. I want to be fair, right, to everybody, the student and the other classmates. Yeah? So it helps you, it gives you a framework, right? This is where I work. I don't work outside of this. This is not me. This is where I can work. And yeah, Dinsmore says it like, it helps you know what your soul, right, is made of, what is inside you. And the last thing, use your experiences, right? Spend time paying attention to your experiences, learning from them, and applying them to your lives. And this is why I've been trying to push you to be aware, right, of what's happening to you, or what are your feelings, why are you feeling that way. This is also experience, right? Yes, you can have internship experience, you can have part-time job experience, but experience is also within yourself, right? What is it that made me okay, I'll start with negative, made me so angry, right, in that situation. Learning from that is also something that helps you learn who you are. And in a way, he says that if you don't do this, you leave every day for nothing. Right? If you're not learning from your experience, why are you leaving that day or that life? so you're wasting it. And so what was wonderful is that he recommends to write a journal or a diary, right? Because we are busy, so we forget, blah, blah, blah. So spending time or doing grateful, whatever it is that helps you remember the day and learn from it. So yes, paying attention requires the ability to focus, and that's why for me, any form of meditation, right? It doesn't have to be the one we do. Some of you have other ways of doing it, yeah? So just being aware of what's happening around you. So basically, right, his first recommendation is exactly what we've been doing with Congruence, what we did with Congruence in the first semester, and hopefully you're still doing it, right, this semester as well. So strength, values, and experiences. Yeah? Those are the three. The second key is do the impossible. Push your limits. And I know this sounds like, ooh, scary. But actually, if you look at what Scott Dinsmore says, it's not that crazy, right? So basically, he argues that we don't do things because either we tell ourselves that we can't do it. You know, I can't, blah, blah, blah. Right? It's coming from us. So in a way, it's what we've talked about when you don't reach unconditional positive regard, right? When you are being too harsh on yourself, this is what usually happens, right? You tend to bring yourself down by like making a list, I can't, I can't, I can't, I can't, I can't. So that's the idea, right? Like the unconditional positive regard is accepting that you can't, but not making it a barrier, right? Like a stop sign. It's not because I can't now that I can't tomorrow or later, right? That's this idea behind unconditional positive regard as well, right? And on top of it, when you can accept what you can or cannot do in a positive way, your self-esteem goes up. So something that you couldn't do, because your self-esteem went up, becomes something you can do, right? Because all of a sudden your image is more powerful. So you have the energy, the strength to do it. And on top of it, this whole concept of negative self-talk, when you can break out of it, sometimes you can achieve things that help you understand who you are even better. So it's like a positive circle, right? Once you break the negative talk, you start believing in yourself more. So you start doing things you thought you couldn't do. And because of that thing you did, you know yourself better. So you have more self, it kind of goes around in a circle. And it's a very powerful tool, right? It's so interesting to see changes in yourself and in others, right? When people stop being so negative about themselves, yeah? So that's what Dinsmore and the PCA, how they connect. And the second thing that we do is that it's not us, but it's the people around us. And I really hope with my whole heart that you don't have so many negative people around you, but I know they exist and we have to deal with them. So yes, so we don't, Scott Dinsmore argues that we don't do things because people around us tell us that we can't do them. And this is a very tricky situation. And if you're not strong inside, it can be very hurtful, right? And make you just give up things that you really care about. So that's also my motivation with the seminar, is to build you to be strong, so that if you start working and you have a coworker that is really negative towards you, you can listen, but it doesn't break you, right? It's like, okay, maybe I can improve that, but without making you weak and sad and all of that inside. And it's not easy. So the consequence of this, negative self-influence or outside influence is that we give up what we're doing because we're like, no, I'm never going to be able to do it. Or we never start. It's like, no, useless. And as I said, even from my experience, I know that if we can get rid of that negative talk, we can do so many things. It's not easy, but we can do it, right? And Dinsmore agrees with me. He encourages us to push ourselves, right? Like a little push, shoulder push or pull yourself. And he says something interesting. I had never thought about it that way. He says, the things that we have in our head that we think are impossible are often just milestones. That's a great word too. It's another way of saying goals, right? Like a smaller goal. It's just a milestone waiting to be accomplished. So instead of looking at something as impossible, you switch your thinking like, that's my next goal, right? And keep you moving until you reach maybe an even bigger goal. And I like that, right? Like instead, I can't, it's like change and put goal on top of it, right? So that it becomes something you want to try. So yes, do the impossible, push your limits. So the idea is that, to me, that's my little conclusion at the bottom. You don't know until you try. And maybe you try and it is, too much, too complicated, too scary, whatever. But I think the trying part is like that very important moment, because later you cannot regret. You'll have, I tried. Didn't work? Okay, all right, that's all right. So keep that in mind, right? Push yourself, push your limits, try to go further, right, on your little journey that life is. So again, I'm going to skip, right, so that you can talk and then we can eat. The last key, the last key to this this idea of becoming a self-expert is connected to the people you are with, right? The people you spend time with. And basically, Dinsmore says, spend time with people who are already doing what you want to do, right? And I think it is very important because the environment has a big impact on us, right? And I see it over and over again. Just recently, I had a friend staying with me last weekend, and at first I was thinking that it's going to be too much work, I'm tired, and all of that. And I think this is like the mentality I hear around me, like everybody's like, oh, I'm so busy, I'm so tired, it's too much work and all of that. But I had a fantastic time, right? She's a really fun woman, and it was just great to have her around. And so that I caught myself being influenced that way, right? In little things like that. And so, everyday environment is powerful. So making sure that you create an environment that will help you achieve what you want to achieve, right? And so this is not from Scott Dinsmore. It's he mentions him. His name is Jim Rohn. I actually don't know him, but I really like what he says. He says that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? So think about the 5 people you spend the most time with, and this is pretty much the influence you get all the time, right? So, and it has an impact on you, right? Whether you want it or not, it does have an impact. So that was a whoa. First, I realized 5 people. I don't even have 5 people in Japan, but that's not counting you, right? So if I count you, then I have like way more than 5, right? But outside of work, I don't. And that was a big shock for me, because I used to have a big social, not big, I used to have a nice social circle outside of work. But since I've been in Japan, it's always work, right? So I realized, this is not good. You need to have people outside of work. So right, like trying to think, so who are those 5 people for me? Who is it? I really like his way of saying it. I'm not sure it makes sense to you, but he says, he recommends to find a group. Sorry, it's a group of people, not a group of people. To find a group of people, yeah, it's a mistake in the handout too, that inspires possibility. So people who help you see that it's possible. Maybe not yet, but it is possible, right? So people that really help you this in this direction, right? The possibilities. And for him, for Scott Dinsmore, it was the TED events, right? Those events where you get to meet all these cool, creative, inspiring people. That's what it did for him. I'm putting it in the past because sadly he passed away. He was climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, and a stone hit him and killed him. So he actually is dead. So I was really sad because I always check, you know, like the TED speakers, who they are now, what they're doing. And so I was really sad and shocked. It smells like pizza or food. Is there a delivery guy? Delivery guy, are you here? Just kidding. Seriously, right? It smells like food, no? No? Okay. I'm hungry, that's probably why. So yes, sorry, completely out of topic, right? But like, the people who are around you have an influence on you. So in this idea of becoming a self-expert, you're going to need help, right? So find these people who are going to help you, right? Reaching what you want to reach with yourself. That's a very important aspect, I think. This is something I haven't told you before because we haven't had a chance, right, to discuss it. But basically, Rogers expanded the person-centered approach to many fields. He was a psychologist, so he created the PCA to help his patients, right? He developed the PCA with his experience with patients, right? People who wanted to help for psychological reasons. But he realized that these core concepts could be used anywhere. And that includes education, peace talk. Actually, Carl Rogers was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize because he helped a lot of people in war situation to find peace in Ireland, in South Africa, in Brazil. He would sit with people who hate each other and try to make them talk, right? Not make, help them talk, right? You would never make anybody do anything. Go back to what's written there, is that he noticed that if you have an environment of acceptance, you know, people accept you, and people are genuine, right? They're not trying to hide, they are themselves, and they understand you in an empathic, I know we haven't studied yet empathic, hang in there, we're getting there, but the people truly understand you, like they really understand your feelings. This is wonderful for people to grow. Right? This is what people need to grow. If there is no acceptance, no genuine feelings and being, and no understanding, people don't grow. Right? They hide, they try, you know, to avoid problems, but they're not going to grow. So yes, absolutely, find the people who are going to give you this, right? So that you can grow. You need to find people who can provide, for me, I describe it often as kind, right? I know it's this kind of environment, but that's actually the word I think, right? Kind. another environment that will help you be yourself and grow. So, absolutely. To link it back to what we've already, studied together, reviewed at the beginning of the semester, you might wonder why I'm trying so hard, right, to help you think about this. It's the reason why I believe that becoming a self-expert, pushing your limits, or spending time with passionate people, I think it really matters because of what we've talked about before. Those are things we can control, right? We have control over this. So many things in our lives we have no control over, right? But those things we can, right? So that's like a little bit of power we have over how we spend our lives or how we change our lives, yeah? And so basically Scott Dinsmore said, no one can tell us what we can't learn about ourselves, right? Because that's insane, right? It's like, no you can't. that we can't learn our own limits and push them, and that we can't surround ourselves with inspiring people. No one can do this, right? This is like something we own, right? Because we are ourselves. So, and maybe this can give a little bit of hope, when people feel really helpless, right? That they can't control anything. Maybe helping them realize, right? No, it's true, life is difficult, life is tough, but there are things we can still control, right? And helping people realize this might be something to practice, right, for ourselves and also with people around us. And basically with the PCA, right, the last thing, connecting it back to the PCA, that puts you in charge of your life, right? By doing this, you become responsible for your life. And Carl Rogers, and remember, he was a psychologist, so some of the people he talked to had severe psychological, very bad psychological problems, but even for them, he always truly believed that we can be in charge. We can all be in charge. He had this, this is something that we'll talk more and more about, but basically he describes it in very difficult words. That's Carl Rogers, but basically he believed in the individual's actualizing tendency. This is something that is still used a lot in psychology. Actualizing tendency means becoming who you are. For him, that was one of his strongest beliefs. Even someone who's entirely depressed and the only thing they want to do is commit suicide. He always thought that if you could give them the environment I described before, that actualizing tendency would come back, right? And would give them that little hope to get out of this horrible situation, right? Of thinking about killing yourself. And for him, it's innate, right? You're born with it. It's not something that you have to, this is in us. So it's pushing us towards growth and fulfillment, right? So that's what he strongly believed in. Mind you, you need the environment, right? When you're in a really bad place in your life, you need the environment to get out of it. And so this is what he says in A Way of Being. I have come to trust the capacity of persons to explore and understand themselves and their trouble, and to resolve these problems in any close, continuing relationship where I can provide a climate of real warmth and understanding. Right? So that's what I've been telling you. You can reach this with the right environment. So just in terms of psychology, Carl Rogers changed a lot of things in psychology. Before, the psychologist, you went to him or her, you talked about your problems, and the psychologist solved your problems, except they were not solved, right? And he changed that to, I'm here to listen to you. I'm here to be of support, but I know you can do it. I know you have the solution. I will help you find it, right, if you want me to. So that dynamic, the change was huge, right, really, really big. Nowadays, we go back to the psychologist knows everything, but not everybody, right? So, so that is it for today.